This is my 99th death. I watched helplessly as the waiter pierced my heart, and the next second I reappeared in the first carriage. My name is Leo. This was supposed to be the graduation trip I had been looking forward to, but I found myself trapped on this regimented train, dying and being reborn over and over again. Like now, one moment my consciousness dissolves, and the next I'm perfectly seated back in the first carriage. At this moment, the train doors have just closed. Every seat in the carriage is taken, and the place is noisy and bustling. Some people are packing their luggage, others are chatting and laughing. But I knew that in 10 minutes, this place would turn into a terrifying purgatory, and the vast majority of people here would die. I leaned against the seat, utterly despondent. It took being killed 99 times for me to realize that this train was fundamentally unsolvable. Even by following the rules perfectly, in the end, I still died again and again. Then just give up. What rules? What contamination? We're all going to die anyway. At that moment, just like the previous 99 times, everyone's phones in the carriage rang at once. An anonymous sender had sent a message. It was surely the same familiar rules, the same familiar routine. I had long since memorized those rules until they were ingrained in me. But in the end, the outcome was always the same. I picked up my phone, glanced at it, and accidentally noticed a few bold lines. K411 train, new rules. This time, the train's rules seemed different. I stared at the lines of red text that appeared on my phone. Welcome aboard, train K411. All passengers must strictly obey the train rules. The new rules of train K411, general provisions, are as follows. Rule 1. Do not get off this train until it reaches the terminal station. Rule 2. This train has only 5 carriages. There is no 6th carriage. Rule 3. The carriage lights are old and sometimes malfunction. If the lights go out, immediately sit back in your seat and fall asleep. You may pretend to be asleep. Rule 4. In each carriage, the staff will provide 1 meal. Food is hard to come by. Do not waste it. Be sure to finish it. Rule 5. The restroom is safe. When the restroom indicator light turns red, do not enter under any circumstances. Rule 6. Do not stare at the water in the toilet. After all, there's nothing in the toilet. Rule 7. On the train, there are only attendants wearing blue uniforms. There are no attendants wearing black uniforms. Rule 8. The attendants on the train work hard. Please do not pick fights with them. Rule 9. There is only one conductor on the train. If the conductor's clothes turn red, flee as quickly as possible. Rule 10. If you notice someone outside the window staring at you without blinking, immediately look away and do not make eye contact. I scrolled down further. The next page contained the rules for the first carriage. Only one rule. First carriage rule. Rule 1. Carriage number 1 is a silent carriage. Passengers, please keep quiet. Do not disturb it. The message stopped right there. And that's it. Where are the dozens of densely packed rules that used to be here? In the previous 99 times, the first carriage of light had more than a dozen rules. Now, there was only one left. Has heaven taken a special liking to me? Light sprang into my eyes. Maybe this time I can escape from here smoothly. I saw hope. At that moment, the carriage grew even noisier. Who sent the harassing text message? These days, spam texts are everywhere. That's funny. I've ridden so many trains and never bothered with any of those stupid rules. Don't worry about it. It's just a prank. Yeah, it's so boring. The people on the train discussed it for a while, and then the matter was pushed to the back of their minds. Kevin, my high school desk mate sitting next to me, was muttering something as well. I ignored him. This man I once considered a good brother stabbed me in the back during my countless reincarnations. Although he was constrained by rules and forced into it, I saw through a lot of things. Whether he lives or dies is no longer my concern. I won't harm him, but I won't help him either. I quietly gazed out the window by myself. The view outside still looked normal, but by the time we reached the second carriage, that kind of scenery would never be seen again. Ding! A pleasant journey is about to begin. The train will depart in 5 minutes. Passengers, please remain quiet. A voice came over the loudspeaker, but no one listened. The train remained in an uproar. 5 minutes later, the train sounded its whistle. The scenery outside began to recede, and I drew my gaze back, because in the instant the train started, the carriage had already turned into a human hell. Those who had been joking and shouting a moment ago had their heads blown apart instantly, brain matter splattering, bodies collapsing in a heap. The carriage fell into a brief, deadly silence, then erupted into screams. "Ah! Someone's killing people, ah!" The ear-splitting shouts rang through the entire carriage. I clapped my hands over my ears. It was unbearably loud. I had seen this scene 99 times already. It's not that I never tried to save them, but not only did no one believe me, they even suspected I'd sent anonymous texts to deliberately sow panic. Spittle nearly choked me. Trouble stirred by meddling in others' affairs is always my own fault. This is the deepest truth I've learned after being reborn countless times. At that moment, those screaming people all had their heads burst apart. 2 or 3 minutes later, the carriage fell utterly silent. I glanced at Kevin sitting beside me. He actually wasn't dead. You have to understand, in the previous 99 times, except for the few occasions when I saved him, he had his head blown off and been forcibly logged out right at the start. His chattering, non-stop nagging never stopped. This time, there really was something different. I looked at the silent carriage. Of the more than 100 people originally on board, fewer than 40 remained. Those left were all clutching their mouths in terror, their bodies splattered with brain matter and blood. At that moment, the door at the front of the carriage opened, and an attendant in a blue uniform pushed a small trolley inside. He ignored the corpses strewn across the floor and handed each person who was still breathing a plate of sticky paste. The paste was a deep brown like some kind of vomit, making people feel sick just to look at it. But I knew it was precious food. Later, even in the cars behind, people would pay with their lives to get it. I picked up the food from the little table and ate it in big, greedy mouthfuls. When I finished, I licked my lips, still not quite satisfied. Kevin, who was sitting beside me, seeing that I'd cleaned my plate, picked up the food on his dish and swallowed it without hesitation. That surprised me a little. The second time we were reborn, I had gone to great lengths to help him, and only then did he barely finish his meal. Why did he suddenly get smart this time? I didn't think any further, my gaze sweeping over the other people in the carriage. Most of the remaining people were sensible. Because of the strange incident that had suddenly occurred on the train, most realized this was no prank and began to take the rule seriously. Rule 4. In each carriage, the staff will provide one meal. Food is hard to come by. Do not waste it, be sure to finish it. Even though the food before them was disgusting, even though the carriage was full of corpses that turned their stomachs, most people still forced themselves to swallow the meal despite their nausea. Only a few remained unwilling to believe it all, glaring at the food with contempt and not moving. A few more had managed to swallow with difficulty, only to be overcome by nausea and throw it back up. 10 minutes later, the waiter silently took the plates away, and those who hadn't eaten, including the ones who had vomited, began to act strangely. Their behavior grew odd, and their eyes gradually turned red. I knew they had been contaminated by it. Even now, I still haven't figured out what that thing on the train actually was. If you didn't eat, it would contaminate you. If you broke the rules, it would erase you. I think it was perhaps an invisible force hidden in the carriage, the absolute order of this train, something no one could defy. At that moment, those strange people, some madly drove knives into their own chests, others banged their heads against the carriage wall again and again until their skulls were smashed. Others, finding strength from who knows where, twisted their limbs into knots like twisted dough and finally died in excruciating pain. The passengers still alive in the carriage watched in horror. I think they must have been enormously grateful that they had just eaten that dish of paste. When all those who had broken the rules were dead, the blood smell in the carriage grew even stronger. At that moment, the phone screen lit up and a message popped up. Passengers, please proceed to carriage 2. This carriage has been contaminated and will be disinfected and cleared in 5 minutes. I slowly stood up, and Kevin beside me stood as well. We exchanged a glance without a word, and he followed me as I headed straight for carriage 2. The doors of the second carriage had all been opened. The others inside the carriage read the text message and no longer raised any questions. They moved away from their seats on tiptoe. 5 minutes later, the door between the first and second carriages closed. Through the small window in the door, the first carriage could be seen already shrouded in a red mist of blood. I found a seat in the back corner, and Kevin sat down close beside me. He smiled at me, as if trying to reassure me not to be afraid. I found his reaction a little odd. In the past dozens of times, he was terrified. He leaned toward me and whispered, "The second carriage can speak now." I was startled. How did he know the rules of the second carriage? Could it be? Soon enough, he confirmed my suspicion. He said that last time he and I had already reached the fourth carriage, only to be erased by the rules in the end. Then he was reborn. I recalled what he had said about that time. It did seem to have happened that way. But he didn't know that I had been reborn too. So this time he enthusiastically told me about the happenings on the train. I didn't listen closely because he had only been reborn once. I'd been reborn 99 times. I was already more than familiar with all of this. But since he was willing to talk, I didn't mind having another helper. Only, instinctively, I touched the small of my back at the thought of this helper. If I wanted to leave alive, I had to keep something in reserve for everyone here. Just as we were whispering, the rules for the second carriage popped up on our phones. Rules for the second carriage. Rule 1. Silence lifted. Passengers may converse freely, but please be certain whether the one you are speaking to is a person or a ghost. Seeing this, I glanced around. There were 30 people sitting in the carriage at that moment, but in the previous carriage, the ones who had survived, I counted carefully, were only 25. And when I first entered the second carriage, there had been no one inside. So, of these 30 people, 5 were ghosts. I kept looking. Rule 2. Ghosts are a lovable species. Please do not refuse any of their requests. Right now, I just wanted to spit. Lovable my ass. I've died a dozen times, and each time I was eaten by a ghost. Rule 3. The train serves only porridge as food. There is absolutely no other food. The so-called porridge was that glob of paste. Rule 4. Do not eat food given by anyone other than the staff. I skimmed the rules quickly. Compared to the previous 99 times, there were several fewer items this time. It seemed the rule train really had lowered the difficulty, and I felt a quiet thrill. By then, most people had finished reading the rules as well, and the carriage grew lively. What kind of hellish place is this? Is there any way to get out? My phone doesn't even have a signal. I can't contact anyone outside. How did that rule message get sent? This is terrifying. Wah, I want to get off. I want to go home. Some people in the crowd were crying, some were shouting, and some were frantically trying to find a solution, but no one made any rash moves. After all, having seen so many people die with their own eyes, the carriage was filled with an atmosphere of tension and unease. At that moment, a waiter walked in through the front door. As always, he handed out food to every seat. I didn't eat, and Kevin didn't either. The attendant wore a blue uniform on the upper half of their body, but black trousers on the lower half. Yet the attendant in the previous car had a uniform that was clearly uniform in color from top to bottom. The train rules stated, on the train there are only attendants wearing blue uniforms. There are no attendants wearing black uniforms. Add the rule in the second carriage. Do not eat food given by anyone other than the attendants. This person definitely is an attendant. The food he gives must not be eaten. By now, some people were already gobbling the food down. Kevin and I didn't meddle. And those who had finished first, before long, their eyes turned red. Then, they began frenzied acts of suicide. The others still eating instantly widened their eyes. What's going on? Didn't the rules say you had to finish the food? Everyone panicked, holding their plates, and eating felt wrong, and not eating felt wrong too. I remember now. It was that waiter from just now who was suspicious. A gentle-mannered man with glasses stood up from the crowd. His uniform was blue on the upper half, but black on the lower half. The man with glasses was hurriedly explaining. "Why the hell didn't you say so earlier?" Someone in the crowd cursed, and everyone threw down the plates in their hands. A few people began to force themselves to vomit, but most of them couldn't bring themselves to vomit. One of their eyes had turned red. Just when everyone thought something else was going to happen, those with one red, I showed no movement at all. It's fine, I'm fine. Haha. Looks like you only get infected if you finish it all. Good thing I'm a slow eater. 10 minutes later, the real waiter arrived. He calmly handed out food to each person, and Kevin tugged me toward the restroom. Put your plate up quickly. We're going to eat in the bathroom. I carried the food and followed Kevin into the bathroom, gently closing the door behind us. Train regulations. Rule 6, do not stare at the water in the toilet. After all, there's nothing in the toilet. As soon as I entered, I snapped the toilet lid shut and sat on it, plate in hand. Kevin stood beside me explaining that if nothing unexpected happened, out there a scene of ghosts devouring people would soon play out. Last time, after the servers had handed out the food, the ghosts revealed their true faces. They quickly finished their own meals, and apparently still hungry, began asking the people around them for more. Rule for the second carriage. Rule 2. Ghosts are a lovable species. Please do not refuse any of their requests. If you don't give them what they want, they'll eat you bite by bite as if you were food. If you give it to them and you yourself have no food left, you will be defiled by it. And written in Article 5 of the train regulations, the restroom is safe. So hiding in the bathroom would perfectly avoid the ghost request. I listened to Kevin's account. Of course, I already knew all this, and, in fact, it was the method I had told him last time. This was the most reliable way to beat it that I had only worked out after being eaten by the ghost several times. Kevin finished nagging and then picked up the tray. He glanced at the yellowish-brown, unidentifiable thing hanging on the bathroom wall and found it hard to bring himself to eat. I held the tray and swallowed with a blank expression, feeling nothing at all. For life and death, these things amounted to nothing. Kevin, seeing me eat heartily, also forced back his nausea and shoved food into his mouth. No sooner had we taken a couple of bites than a scream sounded from outside. It seemed the ghost had finished the food and had begun eating people. Recalling the experience of being eaten alive by a ghost, I shuddered violently. After the commotion outside subsided, Kevin and I went back to our seats. By then there were only a dozen or so people left in the carriage, and the seats were splattered with blood everywhere. Those 5 ghosts had vanished without a trace. Just then, the attendant walked in again. He cleared the plates with one hand and handed a piece of bread to the man with one reddened eye. Eat it, and the mildly contaminated will return to normal. The waiter said this, expressionless, and walked away. The man with glasses stood up. You can't eat that. The rules state that only porridge is provided on the train. There is absolutely no other food. This bread is definitely suspicious. A middle-aged woman muttered, You say I can't eat it, so I can't? You weren't contaminated yourself. The bespectacled man had spat out the contaminated food at the time, so his eyes hadn't turned red. The tall man sitting beside him chimed in, Yeah, you say we can't eat it. If something goes wrong later, we'll drag you down with us. The man with glasses fell silent after hearing that and sat down without another word. In the end, everyone followed the rule and didn't eat it. After all, no one dared take that risk. Fortunately, only one eye turned red and nothing else happened. Seems the man with glasses was right. 20 minutes later, the door leading to the third carriage opened. A message also arrived on the phone. Passengers, please proceed to the third carriage. This carriage has been contaminated and will be disinfected and cleaned in 5 minutes. Everyone stood up and moved toward the third carriage. After the carriage doors closed, the second car filled again with a mist of blood. Kevin and I still sat in the back corner. A heavy-set man with a fierce face sat in the front row. I remembered this fat man. He wasn't a good person. Several times before he had nearly killed me. The fat man turned his head and stared at me. Do you know something? Otherwise, why would you hide in the bathroom when the ghost was eating people? The fat man said softly. I was startled. Brother, that was just a coincidence. My buddy had diarrhea. He was timid and didn't dare go alone, so he dragged me to the bathroom with him. Kevin chimed in beside him. Yeah, that food looked filthy. No wonder you got an upset stomach. The fat man seemed to buy that line. If you know something and don't tell me, I'll kill you. The fat man threatened viciously. I returned her smile and nodded to show I understood. A failure to endure small irritations can ruin great plans. A real man can bend and stretch. I comforted myself with that. Not long after, the waiter brought the food, and the rules for the third carriage were sent over shortly afterward. Rules for the third carriage. There are 14 people in this carriage. Among them, one is a ghost in disguise. Please identify the ghost within 20 minutes. Identify correctly, and you may proceed to the next carriage. Identify wrongly, and you'll remain here forever. After reading the rules, the crowd began to stir. No one noticed that, at some point, another ghost had slipped into the carriage. The ghost had taken on the appearance of a passenger, indistinguishable from any human. To pick it out of the 14, you need an extraordinary memory, able to recall everyone's faces from the previous car and know for certain who had died and who was still alive. But in a state of terror, people's recollection of the faces around them usually becomes very poor. After all, everyone was focused on the horror. Who would be paying attention to what the people in the carriage looked like? Everyone seemed to be desperately trying to remember. Kevin picked up my phone, typed a few characters, then quickly deleted them. He had typed the second seat in the 4th row. I smiled at him. Which is human and which is ghost? After surviving 99 deaths, I knew better than anyone. But since he's willing to play the good guy this time, let him. 20 minutes passed quickly. The waiter handed each person a card. I wrote the ghost's seat number on it, and the next second the card turned yellow. The cards of most of the other passengers had turned green. A attendant stood at the doorway to car number 4. Passengers holding yellow cards, please proceed to the 4th carriage. This carriage has been contaminated and will be disinfected and cleaned in 5 minutes. At those words, the carriage erupted into chaos. What? I guessed wrong. How could you be wrong? It was clearly it. Who took the yellow card? Who guessed correctly? Grab it. If we get it, we'll survive. The atmosphere inside the carriage turned tense. At that moment, someone caught sight of the yellow card in the glasses-wearing man's hand. With a grimace, he lunged forward to snatch it. Before he even reached the man with glasses, the attendant's suddenly elongated arms pierced straight through his body. The body crashed to the floor, and the carriage fell silent. No one dared cause a disturbance anymore. In the end, Kevin, the man with glasses, the fat guy sitting up front, and I all went into the 4th carriage together. A few others who tried to force their way through were also taken down by the attendants, their heads crushed in one by one. The carriage doors shut, and screams came from carriage 3. But inside I felt nothing. After going through it 99 times, I was long since numb to it. Not long after, the screams stopped. Kevin and I still sat in the last row. The glasses-wearing man and the fat man were seated in front of us. Now there were over 100 people on the train, but only the 4 of us remained. Yet the game wasn't over. A new rule for carriage 4 popped up on my phone, just one line. Rule 1. Within 2 hours, find the rule of carriage 4. The last time I died in this carriage. We both failed to find a rule, and in the end were erased by it. Kevin whispered to me, looking as if he were recalling that terrifying experience. I remember the time he spoke of. That time, all of us searched the entire carriage and still couldn't find the so-called rules. In the end, everyone in the carriage died. In the rebirth that followed, I gave up completely, and by accident I discovered the rules. I glanced out the window. From the 2nd carriage onward, everything outside had turned into a white blur, nothing discernible. And the white fog outside was slowly growing dim. It seemed the sky was about to go dark. I unlocked my phone and checked the time. It was already 7 o'clock in the evening. The rules wouldn't appear until it was completely dark. 2 hours would be enough. I leaned back in my seat, recalling the rules, when suddenly there was a loud bang from ahead. It was that fat man. He slammed his palm down hard on the folding table in front of me. Hey, you skinny stick. What are you spacing out for? Aren't you supposed to be looking for the rules? What skinny stick? Sure, I'm thin, but I'm not skinny enough to be a bamboo pole. I sighed and stood up helplessly. The bespectacled guy walked over and chimed in. Yeah, we've only got 2 hours. If everyone looks together, we'll find it sooner. Now everyone must unite, or we won't survive together. I nodded to humor them, but in my head I was thinking, once you see the rules, you'll know how ridiculous that idea is. I pretended to search, and soon the white mist outside the window was swallowed by darkness. I moved away from them and went to the window by the front seats of the carriage. The message said I needed to find the rule for carriage 4, but it didn't say the rule had to be inside the carriage. I stared out the window for a few seconds, and it appeared. Train regulations. Rule 10. If you notice someone outside the window staring at you without blinking, immediately look away and do not make eye contact. I saw its eyes, dripping with blood, and instantly looked away. My gaze slid down. I looked at its belly. Outside the window, it was pitch black, and I could only make out a simple outline. But within that outline, a few faint lines of small characters slowly began to appear. Carriage Rule 4. Rule 1. Do not tell anyone else about this rule you have seen. Rule 2. The attendant has been contaminated. Do not eat any food he gives you. Rule 3. If you wish to obtain food that controls the contamination, exchange any one of your 5 internal organs. I skimmed the rules quickly, and the figures outside the window gradually disappeared. These rules were not much different from the ones in my previous rebirths. I analyzed a few of the rules. The first 2 were easy to understand, but the third one, Rule 3, stated that one must exchange a person's 5 organs for food, and the 5 organs include the heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys. This is meant to make the people inside the carriage slaughter one another. Typical, just as usual. Though I could use my own viscera, there's no medical equipment here. Digging into myself would cause pain before I could even extract anything. I looked at the other 3 in the carriage. Each of them was more robust than I was. I'm not sure I could beat any of them in a one-on-one fight. This is exactly when the value of allies becomes apparent. I leaned toward Kevin and gave him a look. Rule number 1 of Carriage 4. Do not tell anyone else about this rule you have seen. I gave you a look. Interpret yourself. That doesn't count as telling, right? Kevin had been my desk mate for 3 years. We had a bit of tacit understanding between us. He saw the way I glanced toward the window and quickly understood my intent. I casually pointed out Article 10 of the train regulations to him, and he nodded in comprehension. After all, having experienced a rebirth once, he had some experience. Kevin, as expected, soon found the rule. By tacit agreement, we chose the fat man as the person to barter food with. Because the glasses-wearing man looked easier to deal with than the fat man, but he was clever. Trying to trick him would be too easy to get caught. And although the fat man looked fierce, his intelligence didn't match that of the glasses-wearing man. Kevin and I worked out a plan. We had no weapons and could only use the rules of the train. Kevin and I called the fat man into the restroom. The bathroom was very small. 3 people felt cramped. The 3 of us squeezed around the toilet. Are you saying the rules are in the toilet water? The fat guy wasn't very convinced. Didn't the train regulations say you're not supposed to stare at the water in the toilet? You wouldn't be trying to hurt me, would you? Train regulations. Rule 5, the restroom is safe. When the restroom indicator light turns red, please do not enter under any circumstances. Rule 6, do not stare at the water in the toilet. After all, there's nothing in the toilet. I patted the fat man's shoulder. Big brother, we're grasshoppers on the same rope now. How could we possibly be out to get you? Article 5 of the train regulations says the restroom is safe, and Article 6 says there's nothing in the toilet. Kevin chimed in, yeah, bro, the rules saying you can't look into the toilet water are clearly misleading. It's just to stop us from finding the regulations. And besides, the 3 of us are here together. There's strength in numbers. If something really does happen, we can definitely handle it. The fat guy, having been brainwashed by the 2 of us in turns, gradually began to waver. Then, shall we take a look? Since there was only half an hour left until the appointed time, I figured, what the hell. I gently lifted the toilet lid. The 3 of us looked down into the bowl at the same time. But after a single glance, Kevin and I silently shut our eyes. A few seconds later, the fat man's shout came from outside. Holy shit, there's a ghost. Saying that, the fat man tried to run out. Kevin and I blocked the bathroom door. The bathroom was already cramped, and he couldn't move his body at once. At that moment, I opened my eyes and saw several clumps of long black hair spreading out from the toilet. The hair was tightly strangling the fat man's neck, and he began to struggle frantically. Kevin and I quickly backed out of the bathroom. The bespectacled man in the back of the carriage also heard the commotion, but because he was anxious to find the rules, he only asked one question. After all, at a life-or-death moment, who cares about the life or death of a stranger? Soon the noises from the restroom died down. I knew it was done. In the final 20 minutes, the attendant brought the food. Kevin and I didn't eat. The man with glasses, still not having found the rules, absent-mindedly picked at his food. After the food went down, his eyes turned red. Then his body was squeezed by an invisible force until it was compressed into a wisp of blood-red gas and finally vanished. Now, only Kevin and I remained in the carriage. Congratulations, you have earned the right to enter the final carriage. The front door opened and a middle-aged man walked in. He wore a spotless white conductor's uniform. Congratulations. Saying that, the conductor handed us 2 plates of food and stood to one side, watching us finish. The conductor led us into the last carriage. Compared to the previous carriages, the last carriage was heaven. Here everything was lavish and flamboyant, with all manner of delicacies and jewels strewn across the seats, making one feel as if in a dream. But I knew this was the place that had killed me more than a dozen times. This place was more terrifying than any single train carriage. Kevin didn't remember ever coming here. He seemed a little excited. "Can we leave now?" he asked the conductor who was walking ahead. The conductor didn't move his body. His head turned with a creak. "Yes, dear passenger. If you go any further, you'll reach the 6th carriage. Pass through the 6th carriage, and you may get off." I stopped dead in my tracks. No, wrong. The last time I came here, the rule in the carriage had been, only one person in this car can survive, so in the end, Kevin attacked me. But this time, the conductor didn't mention any rules. Instead, he guided us off the train. And what the conductor said was clearly a trap. My eyes were gloomy. The train's rules say, Rule 2. This train has only 5 carriages. There is no 6th carriage. And yet he insisted on taking us to the 6th carriage. Moreover, the conductor only said it was permitted to get off the train. Train regulations. Rule 1. On this train, do not disembark before reaching the terminal station. If you get off before the train stops. I stared out at the endless darkness beyond the window, as if a vast abyss that could devour all life. The conductor was clearly acting strange. Kevin seemed to have realized something too, and stopped beside me. The conductor looked at us kindly. "Passengers, what's the matter? Don't you want to get off the train?" I looked at the conductor and asked, "Is the train about to reach a station? If it's not the final stop, we won't be getting off." The conductor heard my words and grinned broadly. "The train will keep moving forever. There is no terminus. Since you don't want to leave, then stay here and enjoy yourselves to the fullest." No sooner had he finished speaking than the conductor suddenly vanished. Kevin and I exchanged a glance. What's going on? Is this rules train unsolvable? Does he intend to trap us here for life? I said softly, "No, not for a lifetime. Haven't you noticed there's no porridge here? Porridge is the only food that can suppress the corruption. From the moment we enter the train, we've had to eat at regular intervals." But this carriage was brimming with culinary delights and jewels. Yet there was no kanji. Without kanji, I'm afraid we won't make it through the day. I took out my phone. It hadn't received any further instructions. Is this a dead end? As expected, this rule-bound train is unsolvable. Kevin collapsed in despair, slumping into a nearby seat. At that moment, the lights in the carriage went out. Train regulations. Rule 3. The carriage lights are old and sometimes malfunction. If the lights go out, immediately sit back in your seat and fall asleep. You may pretend to be asleep. I immediately found a seat, sat down, and closed my eyes. A long time passed, and the light still didn't come back on. Half awake, I felt something suddenly drawing close to me. It whispered in my ear, "Don't you know the rules of this carriage? You know them, you always have known. Kill him, kill your companion, and you can go home. Kill him, kill him." The voice grew increasingly shrill. I slowly drew the knife, tucked into the back of my belt. I had slipped it out from the first carriage for this very reason, to guard against Kevin. The sound kept getting louder and more clamorous. "Kill him. Hurry up and kill him. Then you can leave. If he doesn't die, you'll be the one who dies. Kill him." At that moment, The lights suddenly snapped on. My eyes bloodshot, I walked toward Kevin, who still had his eyes closed. I raised the sharp dagger toward his head. Suddenly, I reversed the blade, and the tip thrust backward. A low growl sounded. I swung my head around, and behind me stood the conductor, now clad in red. At the very instant the carriage lights went out, the memories of my previous 99 rebirths began to come into focus. I remembered that in one of those rebirths, I had accidentally learned the conductor's rules. The conductor's rules are as follows. If you kill everyone on the train will never stop running, and the conductor will be able to exist forever. And the conductor had already been corrupted by the time we entered the fifth carriage. You could tell from the way his head had suddenly turned, and from the moment his figure vanished. The train's rules say, Rule 8, the attendants on the train work hard. Please do not pick fights with them. The rule only told us not to get into conflicts with attendants, but it never said we couldn't clash with the conductor. The conductor was just afraid we'd use this rule to turn the tables on him. So he confused us and set us against one another. At that moment, Kevin woke up too. The conductor wasn't very capable. We quickly teamed up and took him out. At the moment the conductor died, a long, low moan came from outside the train. I felt the train's speed slow little by little. I thought, this time the train could finally pull into the station. When the doors opened, I stepped down from the car, my excitement growing with every step. Kevin sat motionless in the carriage, staring at me. Why haven't you gotten off yet? Though in one of the rebirths he had attacked me. People look after themselves. Heaven and earth be damned. He had no choice then. It was unavoidable. If I didn't die, he would. I can understand that. But Kevin still didn't move. Watching the train doors about to close, I wanted to step forward and pull him in, but the doorway seemed to have been filled with a barrier. I couldn't get into the carriage anymore. Kevin smiled at me. Bro, if you can, remember to go see my parents for me. When he finished speaking, the train doors slammed shut with a clang. Then, a slip of paper flew out from the carriage. On the paper, in bold letters, was written, Rule of Carriage 5. Rule 1. This train will arrive at the terminal in 10 minutes. Rule 2. This stop will last 1 minute, and only one person is allowed to disembark. I suddenly remembered the time Kevin killed me. In the last moment of my life, I faintly saw Kevin's face turn into that of a conductor in a red uniform. It seems at that time, Kevin had already died in the fourth carriage. I stumbled home in a daze. My parents had made my favorite sweet and sour spare ribs. Leo, dinner's ready. I answered, but then noticed my mother had set the meal down beside a memorial portrait. And in that portrait, glaringly, was my own face. The television was still on.